Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. So what's it been, a little over 4 years at this point? Actually going on 5 years. It's been 5 years since January 6, 2021, and we're still asking many of the same questions. And one of the most important questions that we've been asking for years is how many federal agents or informants were in that crowd, and most importantly, what exactly were they doing? Well, of course, after the event transpired, FBI officials dodged that question like Neo from the damn Matrix. They refused to give a straight answer. At first it was none, then it was, oh well, we had some operations, but they of course refused to give us the specifics. They refused to tell us even a ballpark figure, and that silence created some pretty heavy suspicion. You know, it created a vacuum, and into that vacuum poured legitimate suspicion as to the three-letter agency's involvement in that day. And well, today at least one part of that unanswered question is now answered. The feds were freaking in on it. In other words, more confirmation of what we already suspected and already knew. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape.
I was living in Africa during this season where the January 6th conversation was going on. And one of the biggest questions that I had was, why aren't people who live in the United States seeing what I can see all the way from Africa? Now, at the time, I had stopped watching Fox News, so this isn't an issue of MSNBC and CNN versus Fox. This was me looking at curated footage online from independent journalists, clearly showing that the feds were clearly agitating the crowd to move into the Capitol building, and that police officers had opened up the building for them to get into. Yet, you kept hearing the narrative that this was some insurrection that was masterminded by Trump and some far-right organizers. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say about this.
All right, folks, so there's a report that's actually circulating right now showing that there was as many as 275 federal agents and informants present in the crowd on January 6th. Look at this.
It's our constitutional duty to do oversight. Now, in that video, that was your answer to a question to me 2 years ago. When I said how many agents or assets of the government were present on January 5th and January 6th and agitating in the crowd to go into the Capitol and how many went into the Capitol. Can you answer that now?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Oh, last time, you don't know how many there were or there were none?
I don't know the answer to either of those questions. If there were any, I don't know how many. I don't know whether there are any.
I think you may have just perjured yourself that you don't know that there were any. You want to say that again, that you don't know that there were any?
I have no personal knowledge of this matter. I think what I said the last time.
You've had 2 years to find out, and the day, by the way, that was in reference to Ray Epps, and yesterday you indicted him. Isn't that a wonderful coincidence? On a misdemeanor. Meanwhile, you're sending grandmas to prison. You're putting people away for 20 years for merely filming. Some people weren't even there yet. You got the guy on video. He's saying go into the Capitol. He's directing people to the Capitol before the speech ends. He's at the site of the first breach.
And they arrested people who were chatting from a different jurisdiction and imprisoned them for over 19 years? You know, this is insane. But you know what? People who are spoon-fed or brainwashed by MSNBC would say, well, what he did was way worse than an FBI informant on the ground instigating the crowd to go into the Capitol building.
Directing people to the Capitol before the speech ends. He's at the site of the first breach. You've got all the goods on him, 10 videos, and it's an indictment for a misdemeanor? The American public isn't buying it.
And now, of course, if that number is accurate, which I'm sure it is, it raises an obvious question. Who were they? And were they simply there to monitor? Why would you need 275 people ready on hand to be there in the first place unless you thought something was going to happen? Were they there simply innocently chaperoning the event? Or were they there to push people forward? Were some of the people caught on tape urging others to enter the building, cutting barriers, opening doors part of the operation? Obviously, the FBI understands mob mentality is very real. Once a crowd is heated and directionless, a handful of very loud voices can steer thousands to do something that they wouldn't normally engage in. And so the question is, were FBI people key actors attempting to tip this situation from a protest to a riot?
radio journalist from Michigan was shooting video that day at the Capitol. What he captured were two most charitably called suspicious actors, but they are dressed in such a way that led him to believe that they were government agents. And one of them, after the windows had been broken by a protester, it was encouraging people to pull the rest of the glass out and go inside. Bobby Powell, who was the journalist that had shot it, and he has his camera rolling, he told him that would be illegal. He warned people off not to go into that window. And then he turned his camera around and he caught this agent or suspicious actor pulling a large pane of glass out. When he realized he was being filmed, he quickly dropped it. It seems apparent on the video that he did not want to be seen doing what he just did. So he pulled in a protester and started blaming him. He said, "What are you doing breaking that window?" We don't know. His facial image is not on any of the Sedition Hunters sites or the FBI's most wanted site, but he clearly was committing criminal damage to property, and he has not been charged.
Why don't you guys open up?
These are the things that mainstream media don't want you to see. And when you have conversations with your friends who live on MSNBC and CNN, these are the talking points that they give, the exact talking points that the talking heads on MSNBC and CNN would always give. It was an insurrection. How about January 6th? One of the most frustrating things that I've experienced is what I saw in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination. When conversations around left-wing violence will be brought up and how there's more evidence of violence coming from the left, the very next word out of their mouths will be January 6th. Meanwhile, we're finding out that January 6th was a setup.
You guys open up. Because I think that'd probably be illegal. I know my glasses.
I don't know about you guys, but to me it seems a little bit suspicious. There's all kinds of very odd clips, not to mention Ray Epps and others. I'm sure many people at the FBI are going to say, well, we were just there to observe. We had 275 people deployed, just as a precaution. Well, I don't know. I feel like the most important precaution, if the FBI and other intelligence agencies knew that something could have happened, that there was a clear threat on the day of, you wouldn't deploy undercover agents in the crowd. You would probably, I don't know, secure the damn Capitol. And of course, then there's a whole lot of other suspicious elements, like magnetic doors opening from the inside, just allowing people in. Nancy Pelosi's documentary film crew positioned to capture the chaos following Nancy Pelosi in a separate building, filming her escape from supposed danger.
It was all a setup. It was all theater. And that Democrats are great with theater, crying on command, pretending that they have that they're handcuffed from behind while being led out of the vicinity of a protest. Look, we've seen their strategies, and of course their friends at the left-wing media outlets go ahead and amplify the messages that they're trying to send out there to make it seem like they're legitimate.
We got the issue of the barricades that they set up, barricades that were so flimsy they could be pushed aside with a single finger, not to mention Nancy Pelosi's refusal to accept and deploy the National Guard on scene. They knew that there was a threat. When you have that many people who are obviously riled up because of some issue, all descending on the Capitol building in the thousands, it doesn't take a frickin' Einstein to understand that things can get really chaotic. You have a couple bad actors in that crowd, things can get completely out of control. The idea that they didn't set up a serious security perimeter around the Capitol basically tells me all that I need to know. And now we know that instead of doing that, what they did was deploy agents in the crowd who were likely agent provocateurs. All the facts continue to pile up. All combined, I think paints a picture that looks less like an unforeseen disaster, less like, oh, the dangers of MAGA, more like they set the stage to set a narrative. January 6th was not America's greatest terror threat, as Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and pretty much every clown Democrat suggested. It wasn't proof of MAGA extremism and radicalism. It was clearly engineered. They engineered the weakness of security. It was coordinated negligence, and very possibly deliberate infiltration of the crowd, knowing who was at the head of the FBI back then. And don't get me started with this, oh, it was during Trump's term, therefore it was his FBI. No, the FBI was actively coordinating against him. The 7th floor of the FBI tried to unseat him from his office. James Comey's being indicted right now for a reason, and so I think probably the most likely explanation is that they deliberately engineered and orchestrated this entire false flag PSYOP event.
And if you don't agree that that's the case, then I've got a bridge to sell you. In fact, I've got a wing of Buckingham Palace to sell you, okay?
And that's why they stonewalled so hard on giving answers. That's why they called you a conspiracy theorist if you asked any legitimate questions. And well, now we know that hundreds of federal agents were in that crowd, and so we have to get to the bottom of it. Out of all the people that we have on video clearly encouraging the crowd to storm the Capitol, were any of them federal agents? We need to get final answers, hopefully declassified documents on who Ray Epps was and whether he was actually connected here. Obviously, something stinks. How much more obvious does it need to get? And then, of course, what made it even worse, how January 6th became the premise for justifying every other attack on free speech.
I want to see arrests, indictments, people going to prison, actual prison. Right now, all we're seeing is theater. People getting indicted, grand juries, Pam Bondi behind lecterns, giving speeches. The only way that all of this can be corrected is when bad actors pay for their crimes. And notice that I'm not calling for unjust lawfare or people being arrested because they are Trump's political enemies, okay? That's what people who don't use their heads say. It's a talking point on MSNBC and CNN, and they just blurt out the talking point without doing any research themselves. If any of this is true, if over 200 informants and agitators were in the crowd on January 6th, it blows that whole narrative out of the water. But beyond that, people have to go to jail. And we're going to see many stories about how Trump is a fascist and how he's attacking his political opponents. We're going to hear that, and we're going to hear it loud from all of the usual suspects. But you know what? Nothing less than that will solve this problem.
The assault on political dissent, the deplatforming of the President of the United States, every excuse in the book to weaponize the justice system against peaceful protesters, the January 6 hostages. If this truly was an inside job orchestrated from within to take down Trump and then used as a premise to crack down on American free speech rights and send innocent, entrapped people into prison, then that is beyond corruption. That may even be treason, and the people responsible must be exposed. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
I think there's enough to say that the whole January 6th narrative is completely bogus, and that it is prime time that, or high time that we begin to see a real unveiling of what happened during January 6th. What the January 6th committee has been hiding. Why did they need a pardon, a preemptive pardon, if they were carrying out their activities within the bounds of the law? These are questions that I'm really curious to see and to hear the answers that they have to give. And I'm honestly looking forward to seeing that happen. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this video and my reaction to the video. Do you think that the FBI had a hand in the unrest during the January 6th storming of the Capitol building? I am not going to call it an insurrection. It was a storming, it was agitated, and it was engineered from everything that we're seeing. Let me know in the comment section below. And if you've watched this long, you're a super fan. Please consider supporting us by subscribing, liking, and sharing the video, or by donating by sending us a super thank or joining the membership using the link in the description below. You can also scan the QR code on the screen to join the membership. And it's time to give a shout out to our supporters for their super thank, donations, and memberships. Your financial support keeps us going and helps us stay independent. I am Tara Music, Joseph McFadden NQ4BD, Linda Grace 2, Pampas Die, Bel Campo 8305. Thank you, partners. I can't express how much your support means to me. And please go ahead and watch the next video showing on your screen.